Chapter 20. The gymnasium was one of the boys' favorite places in the complex. Adrenaline surged through them whenever they used the equipment. The thrill of sailing through the air, their bodies precisely responding to their mental commands, filled them with excitement and pride. Their hearts soared with the thrill of onlookers. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan or Lieutenant Henderson, a rare official from the agency, a senator from some covert committee, or Dr. Woodhouse to adjust their breather units as they grew. Not even the doctors were exempt from their performances. The boys knew if they weren't standing in the doorway, someone in ops watched them through the security cameras. They cut loose in here. Their emotions ran free, but their faces remained stern and robotic. The doctors insisted on self-control, but if they looked past the veneer to the completeness of the boys' motions, the flair in their exaggerated dismounts, their joy would be evident. Corny was on the pommel horse in the center of the gym, spinning and twirling, his muscles barely straining under his weight. He pressed into a one-handed handstand, held it, and then switched gracefully from one hand to the other. His body was as straight and rigid as an arrow. Adam was on the uneven parallel bars nearby, whipping around from the bottom bar to the top. He swung once and let go, twisting into a quadruple somersault. He caught the bottom bar with ease. Across the gym by the south wall, it was Edison's turn on the vault. He was in a friendly competition with Mitchell and Dana to see who could perform the most difficult stunt. No one was able to one-up the other for long. No matter how challenging the maneuver, the next in line would do better. They laughed boisterously, knowing Dr. Meyer Brandis, whose quarters were across the hall, couldn't hear them through the soundproofed walls. She was bathing. They smelled her bubble bath. It was thick, perfumey, and billowed out all over the complex. Kelly was away from the rest of the boys on the east side of the gym. He was working on the rings, but was on the floor now. Things weren't going well for him. If the others weren't so preoccupied with themselves, or if Edison, Dana, and Mitchell weren't being so loud, for which he was extremely grateful, they would have noticed he fell off the rings twice. He landed on his face the first time, making a muffled, painful slap on the mat. He hit his tailbone the second time, and that hurt even more. Kelly was angry. I don't fall. None of them did. It was humiliating. He noticed he was rubbing his buttocks in an undignified manner. He stopped and glared at his pack brothers. No one was looking. He jumped up and grabbed the rings again. They were 10 feet from the floor, but he leaped with ease. Kelly restarted his routine for the third time. His orange hair barely wisped as he swung around and around, swinging around. Kelly swung faster. He tried to clear his thoughts and maintain his focus. He tried to keep his mind off the pain in his left arm. He hoped he could go fast enough to make it go away. Please, God, make it stop, he prayed, to a being he didn't even believe existed. He hoped divine intervention could save him from the inevitability of what he knew was happening to him. Okay? Just make it stop. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan came up to the doorway, drawn to the Wolf Boys' laughter. He couldn't remember hearing it before. Their circumstance and rigorous training regimen stripped them of their childhood. The colonel didn't like the complex then. He didn't like the way they treated the boys. There was a lot to be said about children who weren't allowed a childhood, and it was all bad. The soldier part of him disliked it the most. The Wolf Boys had no business training in an area reserved wholly for men. Dying on the battlefield was a warrior's glory, not a child's. The agency was beyond anything a child could understand. Agents were hardened, professional, necessarily savage, and vigilant. What child could comprehend such discipline? Lieutenant Colonel Ryan thought, the doctors are squeezing the boy's brains too tight. Something's bound to explode. The man part of him understood the doctor's rationale. People needed a purpose for their lives to have meaning. The Wolf boys carried death in their veins. Dr. Meyer Brandis gave them a chance for their lives to be worth something. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan was hard-pressed to find anything wrong when he put it like that. He thought of his grandson, James Michael. James Michael's father, Grant Ryan, Jr., the colonel's only son, and his stepmother, Marcy Richardson Ryan, were scientists in service to the agency. James Michael was as disciplined as any of the Wolf boys. Years spent on military bases saw to that, but he hadn't lost his youth. He had a streaming disregard for all things mature. Compared to James Michael, the Wolf boys seemed geriatric. Dr. Meyer Brandis had her way, but it was a cold way. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan didn't care much for that either. Corny dismounted when he saw the colonel. He stood at attention. He opened his mouth to alert his pack brothers, but Lieutenant Colonel Ryan shushed him. He nodded at Corny. "At ease, McCall," he whispered. "I'm observing." Corny smiled. "Yes, sir," knowing his pack brothers heard him anyway. The colonel nodded again, but he no longer saw Corny. His gaze went past him toward the other end of the gymnasium. He looked up. His look became perplexed, and then displayed concern. Corny followed his eyes, realizing everyone in the room was silent. He looked in the same direction as the colonel, right at Kelly. He was still whirling around on the rings, his speed increasing with each turn. He went so fast now, he was a blur. Adam walked toward Corny, his eyes never leaving Kelly as he slapped the chalk off his hands. He sniffed in Kelly's direction. He felt enraged by a scent of fear and worried at the same time. He bit back on his concern, letting out a low growl. He knew by his pack brothers' expressions they smelled the same thing. "He's terrified," Adam whispered. His voice was so quiet the colonel, who was right next to him, couldn't hear him. Corny heard him. "Something's wrong," he said, a small growl escaping. Corny's anger burned at Kelly's scent. It made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. He opened his mouth to call out, but someone else joined them in the gym. "Pearson!" Dr. Wang yelled from the doorway. His tone expressed dire concern. Adam said, "This can't be good." "It's not," Dr. Wang said. He stormed through the gym, pushing past Dana. "What's going on here, Doctor?" Lieutenant Colonel Ryan asked, following him and trying to keep up. "What's wrong with Kelly?" "I don't know," Dr. Wang lied. It was a big lie, too, and all the boys smelled it. The word lie digitally scrolled across their corneas, but no one noticed. "Kelly!" Kelly ignored him. The pain stabbed through his arm into his brain. He fought to control it, straining with the effort, tears streaming down his freckled cheeks. He convulsed in mid-swing, choking. His right hand came loose. He pitched outward, screaming. "Kelly!" the boys cried. Even Adam wasn't immune to the moment. "He's going to fall!" he exclaimed, trying to get under him. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan looked at Adam, stunned. He thought, "He doesn't think he's going to catch Pearson, does he? He'll get squished." Kelly convulsed again. His left hand came loose. He sailed through the air and hit the back wall with a smack. He tumbled down its side and slammed onto the floor. Adam was the first to reach him. He rolled Kelly onto his back. He locked his gaze on his pack brother's terrified eyes. Kelly looked at him, pleading. His eyes rolled back into his head, and he began to seize. "Oh, Lord," Dr. Wang cried, running over. He leaned over at him, grabbed Kelly by the shoulders, and held him down. He sucked in a deep breath and hollered, "Red alert!" Corny rushed to the doorway and hit the large red button on the intercom panel. Sirens blared throughout the building. Tikos said, "Red alert in the Alpha Wing Gymnasium. All staff, report immediately." Corny's heart sank as he looked back at Kelly. He thought, no one's ever called a red alert before, not even during training. It's for life and death emergencies. He gasped, feeling dread grip his heart. "No, please, let him be okay." "Bailey," Dr. Wang yelled at Edison. His voice wavered. "Get the stretcher." Lieutenant Colonel Ryan knelt on one knee next to him. "Is there anything I can do, Doctor?" he asked. Kelly's color faded to a freckled, pasty white. "You can pray, Colonel," Dr. Wang replied. He held tighter as Kelly's seizure became more violent. He turned, fright creasing his features, and yelled, "Where's that damn stretcher?"